There's one thing, which is like, would the AIs be capable enough that sort of if a large fraction of them banded together, they would have like a pretty reasonable shot at taking over the world, given the mitigations we have? Sort of like, could they do it? There's another question of like, but would they want to do this? Like, why would they want to take over the world? And in fact, we train them to have particular properties. Why didn't we just train them to be nice? And so I think that the concern of, well, why didn't we train them to be nice? Why didn't that work? Is, well, maybe we train them to look nice. And, we have our behavioral training method, and that's all we have, sort of the only tool we have in our, the biggest tool. And, it's a good tool, to be clear, is to train AIs to produce outputs that look good to us. And this has the advantage of you get outputs that look good to you. And that might mean that the cognition the AI is doing is the cognition you wanted, but it could also be that it's doing cognition you didn't want that produces the outputs that you were sort of looking for, because the AI is sort of intentionally optimizing to produce outputs that look good to you. So, you could have ended up with an AI that it sort of has the property of, oh, I'm in training, I should produce an output that the humans would rate highly because, I actually want to like power seek, I want to accomplish goals. Like, this happens for humans all the time. Like when people do job interviews, they're not thinking, oh, I should like be perfectly honest. I should just express exactly what my views are. Often they're like, I want the job, so I'm going to say what they want to hear. And this shows up in, politicians, all kinds of cases. I mean, this is a priori pretty plausible failure mode. And then there's a bunch of sort of back and forth of like, how plausible is this? Where people are like, well, here's a consideration for why this wouldn't occur. And then here's a consideration for why this might be more likely to think. I think a lot of that stuff is very unclear, and it's very complicated how that shakes out. So I feel like a lot of my driving intuition is like, well, if we had these really smart AIs, it would a priori be plausible they would have goals we didn't want at some point. And if they did, that could really cause us problems. And also it's a priori plausible that the AIs would want to collaborate with each other over humans. And so I'm like, what's the chance that we sort of get these, what I would call like this sort of like scheming failure mode where the AIs are conspiring against us to seek power and potentially like faking alignment? Maybe my view is that we see the chance that this is a big problem for us is like 25% or 20%, not like, not overwhelmingly high. Somewhat dependent on precautions and other things. But I would say like high enough to be very scared from my perspective and high enough to take this very seriously.